One of the biggest issues today is that there is an attack on masculinity, right? What I mean by there's an attack on masculinity is that we live in a gynocentric society. And the purpose of this really is for the creation of of making sure that beta males are a regular part of society. Because women are the primary consumers and men become consumers if they think that what they have is what makes them able to have access to women sexually. So by putting men in a position where they think that, okay, cool, in order to have sex consistently, or in order to have women, I need to be in a relationship, or I need to spend a bunch of money on them. I need to buy this, I need to buy that, I need to go to these fancy restaurants, I need to buy these clothes, I need to get her a Birkin bag. It's bullshit, right? Another thing that occurs is this. Most relationships are prematurely integrated. Most relationships are built on a foundation of having what I consider a 5 to 7 level of sexual attraction. I say most relationships that are actual relationships are really a 6 to 7 level of sexual attraction. But the foundation that you really want for a relationship is at least an 8 level of sexual attraction, right? So over time, what's beginning to happen, and what's really started with the Me Too movement and different aspects of the feminine movement, the feminist movement, not feminine, definitely not feminine, but feminist movement, is the idea of conflating seduction, negotiation, and transaction with coercion, right? And this is what I mean, right? It's the hyper victim mentality, hypo agency, it's toxic femininity. So what happens these days, and this is one reason why I think that prostitution should be legal. Do I pay for sex? No. Do I plan to pay for sex? No. Right? But the reason why I think prostitution should be legal and sex work should be legal is so that within consent culture, we can start having more honest conversations about the transactional nature of sex in most relationships. See, most relationships to a certain extent have a somewhat transactional nature when it comes to sex. But what consent culture does is make it so that no man has a right to have any say over making sure that a woman meets up to her part of the deal when it comes to the transactional nature of sexual relationships. That's why they're creating this thing now where they say that a woman can be married and in a relationship she's getting quote unquote pressured for sex, or that a woman is being coerced into sex, or because what rape used to be seen as is a man violently taking the pussy, you know what I mean, or a man date raping and drugging a woman, right? Or a woman saying, no, I don't want to do this, then a man ignoring her and going for it anyways. But nowadays, what a woman can do is she can tap into her sexual shadow, or a man can tap into a woman's sexual shadow, which is something that her conscious mind, her social programming doesn't agree to, but her body, her sexuality, her femininity is drawn to it. And in the midst of operating this specific way, if a woman feels any guilt or shame about the choice that she made, then instead of taking personal responsibility for her own sexual duplicity, to even bring that up is viewed as victim blaming. Most of the time, and I'm not gonna say most because I don't know. There are some dudes who are monsters out here who are out here raping women. But a lot of the times, a woman is just gonna have the ability to play the victim role. And when she plays the victim role, she doesn't take any responsibilities. Everything is a trigger warning. If she's dealing with the man who's masculine and dominant, then when the relationship is over, she gets to push this narrative that, like, every woman says she has an ex who was narcissistic and abusive. But what does that mean? Narcissistic, abusive, and controlling, right? Now that men are becoming more and more conscious of female sexual nature, there are certain things that men just are not going to allow as much when it comes to relationships. So, like, let's say that society is trying to gaslight men and make men ignorant of the validational aspect of a woman's sexual desires or a woman's desire for male validation, and say that it just doesn't matter. I'm just doing this for me. This is bullshit. A woman isn't putting herself out there sexually just for herself. It is for herself, but it's for herself in the way that she's putting herself out there to get a lot of smaller sources of validation, or a couple bigger sources, or one primary source of validation. And if she's already with you, then she's doing that because she's looking for your replacement. Now, some women can be oblivious to this, right? Or at least they'll pretend to be oblivious to this. If you tell a woman, "No, I'm not comfortable with that. Go change your outfit. We're not wearing that out." Right? Or you tell a woman, right? "No, you're not going to be with me and be posting shit like that online." See, I think that it is more realistic, and it is actually more compassionate to give someone an ultimatum and tell somebody exactly what you're going to do and what's wrong with what they're doing, than to just ghost them out the blue and not to communicate. Like what they say is so important, communicate when something is an issue for you within what your boundaries are. Right? So that will be seen as controlling. Let's say a woman has a history of being finessed sexually, right? I'm not talking about being raped. I'm talking about utilizing plausible deniability to put herself in sexual scenarios so that when she finally acts on her sexual desires, she doesn't have to take responsibility for the conscious decision to do it. You tell the woman, "Nah, I'm not going to be dealing with you if you still communicating with your ex." Or you tell the woman, "Nah, don't be hanging out with dudes." Then what society will do is they will take that and spin it around and say that you're controlling and you're possessive because you want to help avoid a woman being in a situation where she's going to have plausible deniability, right? Like, this is something that they see this as victim blaming. I've been going online, especially in like Reddit, and one thing that I've noticed in Reddit is a woman can get online talking about how she got quote unquote manipulated into cheating on her husband by someone online, and talking about she doesn't know how to get out. She'll feel bad for walking away, talking about how the guy said, "Oh, well, he said that I'm his submissive and he's my dom," and and shit like that, right? And when he told me I was a good girl, it made me feel good, like, oh, I did a good job. And that gives her a little ego boost, that validation. And then she lets things proceed. Never at any point says, never at any point says, "I don't want to do this. I'm not comfortable with this." And if she sounds a little bit unsure about the situation, then the man says, "Nah, you're just not used to it. You really want to do it." Then she stick around when all she got to do is block the dude, stop talking to the dude, then start maybe masturbating online or something like that, meet up with the guy fucking with him, and then after the fact say, "Oh, I was manipulated. He took advantage of me." And then everybody will run behind with the woman and then act as if the dude is a predator. Men are predatory, right? This is just a fact. Like, the sexual nature of masculinity is to be predatory. And the sexual shadow of a woman loves that about a man. See, what the sexual duplicity and the sexual repression of society does is it puts someone in a situation to where the things that trigger a woman's sexuality on a shadow level, her sexual shadow on a primal level, she can disassociate from that. And as she disassociates from that, she can play the victim when she got what she wanted out of this situation, which was some dick. Another thing I see is they're having more and more conversations where over time the idea of consent is adding more and more things that would constitute a man being masculine and dominant with a woman in a relationship that's sexual in nature. more and more of those things, and then categorizing those things as coercion, right? And then as those things change over time, part of what the Me Too movement does is a woman can look back from her social programming, look back at the experiences, look back at the history of the situation, and then as she looks back at the situation, she could start to feel guilty about it, start to feel shame, and then take all the responsibility off of herself, and then put that on the man. But the guidelines and the rules and the ideas around consent that are here now weren't there back then. That was just the regular way that people dealt with each other. How can you make new rules and then judge people who operated out of the old rules and were within the guidelines, and then now the person is supposedly a predator, or somebody supposedly a rapist or an offender in some type of way? That doesn't make sense. Like, I remember seeing this list, and this was a list that occurred not too long ago, but it said that if you tell a woman you do it or someone else will, that's coercion, because it's putting pressure on her. People act like they don't understand social contract theory. This is part of the reason why sex work should be legal, because most women do not have any issue being transactional about their sexuality in some way, shape, or form, right? So what's going on now is a man doesn't have the right within society to voice his sexual needs in a relationship when those needs aren't being met. And then after those needs aren't met, he can't then say, okay, cool, you're not keeping up your end of the bargain, you need to step it up or this is over. Y'all would rather him ghost? Oh no, that's bad too. That's quote unquote cowardly as well, right? You get what I'm saying? Because part of what goes on is, let's say a woman, she will set her terms, right? And this is the reason why I believe a man should be the dominant party in most relationships. Yeah, there's some women who can be dominant as well and deal with a feminine man, but that mix of energy on a polarity level, it creates issues. Because on a primal level, a woman is going to be attracted to dominance in a man, masculinity. So when a woman is dominant herself, she's going to be more sexually compatible with a masculine dominant man, a sexually aggressive man. But although she's going to be more compatible with that man, she's going to be in a position to where that is going to go against her social programming. So in the moment she's going to act on it, she's going to enjoy it if it's good. But after the fact, she may feel guilty. She may feel like she let herself down as far as her social programming, her feminist ideals. Why did I let him spit in my mouth? Why did I let him choke me? Why did I let him put his thumb in my ass? Why did I let him put it in my ass and put it in my mouth? And why did I let him do all this? And then you say, oh, well, he didn't ask me to do it ahead of time. But at no point in time did I tell him to stop. At no point in time did I tell him I didn't want to do this. He even told me that if I didn't want to do it, I didn't have to. But I went along with it. But because he didn't ask me and wait for me to say yes and ask for permission, which is something that turns me off sexually because I don't feel it's masculine and dominant, now I can play the victim role. Right? Because let's say a woman is in a relationship, or not a relationship, but a sex relationship of some sort. Most relationships, a lot of the time, they work like this. A woman will say, well, I don't want to have sex with you unless I feel like we're in a relationship, or unless we're strongly on the way towards one, right? Or even married, right? And when a woman has that perspective with a man that she's dating, sex is transactional, because he's sacrificing his needs in order to invest in a woman financially, emotionally, with his time, sometimes with social validation on dates, and that lowers her attraction level, right? Now, as time goes on, she's like, well, if you're taking me out and we're doing all this stuff, then when push comes to shove, I'll be ready to have sex with you. Now, when that time comes, a man is going to be in a position where it's like, well, I did the things that you said you wanted me to do so I can get what I wanted. What's up with what I want? And then now she says, you're not entitled to my body, right? I think a man is perfectly right in those instances to either just walk away and not say shit to her, or give her an ultimatum. This is just some real shit. It's this victim mentality. Everything's about trigger. Everything's about victims. That's not beneficial to either party. It's the internal fight of the modern woman. Her social programming versus her feminine submissive energy. Right? And society is pushing this shit.